WIS is a platform. We're all familiar with platforms. We use Google, we use Facebook, we use Twitter. These are digital platforms. So when I say a platform, you automatically think, oh, that's a digital platform. This is far better than a digital platform. This is meaningful interaction as a community on a social interaction level. So it benefits everyone. This platform is for 7 billion people. It has a great opportunity to bring people together, to tackle social isolation, at the same time as we grow our economies for sustainability and regenerating communities, from children in the schools with kids to our senior citizens with seniors. We all work together collectively. That's the beauty of this program and this project. It's there for everyone. We've brought it from a tweet to now on the international stage. You know, we've spoken at Davos. We're supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, their implementation in 25 cities worldwide. It'll impact over 100 million people. This is just the start. Where we see ourselves in the future is growing and evolving and supporting communities worldwide in your local community, making a difference on that circular economy model, generating income streams, but then reinvesting it back into the community. But the ownership is with the local community, so it stays local. Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm just going to add our guests to sit this morning. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Manuela, Dr. Miriam Berger, Dr. Neela Shabe, Christopher Bailey from the World Health Organization, and Lena. This morning, we're going to be talking about coping strategies during COVID-19. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my colleagues from around the world to join us on this discussion. Please feel free, if you have a question, to pop it into the chat box. And please let us know where you're joining from as well. Let's start. Let's go to Miriam. And if you could just do a short introduction, tell us who you are and what you do. And then we'll move on to Manuela afterwards.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Miriam Berger. I'm an MD and I've worked in pain therapy, in clinical psychiatry, and in public health in Switzerland, and trained further in global health delivery in Boston. As a medical doctor, I have worked in music and the arts as a professional violinist, and my focus lies at the intersection of the arts, music, and health. I work for WIS. Delighted to do so, and I'm happy to join here.
Thanks, Miriam, and I'm looking forward to learning from you about some of the coping strategies that you have. Manuela, in Australia, it's late, I presume, your time zone. We're very grateful for you staying up. Please give us a short introduction.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for hosting me once again. I'm so very proud to be part of WHIS, and I've been listening and following all these WHIS talks, which really are making such a tremendous difference in people's lives, also in Australia, believe me, even that far. So I'm a clinician training functional medicine with the Institute of Functional Medicine, United States. My background is in health science. My work is dedicated to cancer patients, their families, and their network, and how to help them really coping through their physical and emotional recovery. I'm also part of the WHIS as an expert advisor to the SDG 3s. I'm very happy to be here tonight. And so, hi to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Manuela. Christopher, can you hear us? It'd be great to have an insight from just a short introduction from yourself. I think we have Christopher's frozen on us. Lena, perhaps in Norway, could you give us a short introduction? I think you're on mute, but I'll there you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my name is Lena Sevall. I'm a clinical psychologist from Norway. I've been engaged mostly within mental health care during the last 15 years. moving or transitioning into e-health lately, and I found that very timely. I'm very passionate or engaged in promoting a person-centered or more holistic approach to health and well-being in general. So I'm really engaged within schools as well and workplaces. I have a broad perspective, and we're very happy to be here as well.
Thanks, Lena, and I believe it's your birthday as well. So we all wish you the very best on your birthday. So happy birthday! I don't know. I see Neela and Christopher seem to have some challenges at the moment around their the signal. Neela, can you hear us, or can you hear me, Neela?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry, I lost you for a minute. Yeah. So my name is
no problem.
Yeah, Dr. Neela Shetty. Gareth, thank you very much for asking me to join you. It's a great pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. I'm a pediatrician by background.
We've lost Neela, unfortunately. And Christopher, we'll give both a chance to rejoin, and we'll get into the topic, and they can give us a short introduction. Firstly, Manuela, can we start with yourself? How are you dealing with the challenges of coping with COVID-19, and then maybe a little bit of a perspective from a cancer family's perspective, and how do you feel, or if you have any tips for those watching from a cancer perspective to deal with COVID?
Yes, thank you. How am I coping? Well, that's a complex question. I think I'm coping by staying informed, by doing a lot of work. I've been very engaged in doing many different projects, but really making sure that I recharge and I refuel, just similarly to the type of advice that I give to my patients. But in particular for them, look, for many cancer patients, we know that receiving diagnosis of cancer, of course, and undergoing treatments, it's a really extremely stressful experience, and that can render individuals absolutely vulnerable to long-lasting negative psychological outcomes. Interestingly, however, despite many substantial distress that people, my patients, and many others go through, many cancer patients manifest remarkable resilience. So, in a sense, I may say that some of my coping abilities come from actually observing and learning from my patients directly. There've been some wonderful studies being published, available really in various PubMed and Medline, etc. Very many studies that have shown that overcoming cancer and its treatment can be an absolutely fantastic opportunity for personal growth, as well as for enhancing mental and emotional well-being. If we put this in the wider perspective of Corona-19, you can see that people, my patients and others, their families and large and further afield communities really are truly, I think one day they look back and they really will have to pat themselves on the back for being so incredibly strong throughout all this time. So there are so many, some tips that I have with others in collaboration with my colleagues that we have designed for cancer patients. Happy to share maybe a bit later, but it's certainly, there are certain tips and certain ways, certain little checks that I certainly encourage my patients to do throughout the period of their diagnosis, their recovery. But it starts, and I said briefly, and I give the entrance to it always starts with the meaning making. So the meaning making is a conceptual model that someone who are cancer experience, behavioral process of adaptation, if you like, of adjustment. And this meaning making, I think it's perhaps it could be expanded and perhaps proposed to others in society who are not doing as tough as cancer patients are doing right now, but it could be some sort of learning how to actually make create meanings out of what we all really are going through right now. So
no, I appreciate that as well, and thanks for that insight. I think there's a lot of learning. The resilience, certainly from cancer patients, is phenomenal. And maybe Neela, we can come back to you, and maybe you could just give us a short introduction, but also then tell us a little bit about your coping strategies during COVID-19. It would be great to have an insight.
Right. Thank you, Gareth. Sorry about this technical problems. I don't know. I'm sitting near the router, but it's not working. So thank you. Yeah, I'm a pediatrician by background, but I retired from clinical practice now nearly 6 years, but I'm still involved in the NHS as a part of the commissioning side of the health service. I'm still on the governing body of one of the commissioning organizations, but I'm also involved in WIS. So I'm a great fan of World Health Innovation Summit that I've known Gareth for now so many years. And I'm really, it's wonderful to see that WIS is promoting this kind of work and these talks to reach people all over the world. So getting back to kind of my own way of coping with COVID-19, it's now nearly 6 months, as you all know. So initially when this happened, I still remember because I was asked by my son-in-law, who's a GP, to say, I think you should shield yourself because I've got an underlying health condition and I fall into an age group where I'm more prone to catching infection. So I really got a shock of my life. And I said, how am I going to do that, you know? But I obviously kind of, honored that. And the following week, there was official lockdown. So we had to do whatever we had to do really in terms of keeping us safe, but everybody else safe too.
We've lost Neela again, unfortunately. Lena, we're coming up on 30 million global cases of COVID-19. We're facing into a second wave. We've also had, close now to nearly 1 million deaths as well. Psychologically, this has affected quite a lot of people and will do so for the next, foreseeable future. You're a clinical psychologist. You've just written a very prominent post at the World Economic Forum. Could you give us a bit of an insight into coping strategies, perhaps from your perspective? Those who are viewing this on record or repeat or live, what can they do in terms of preparing themselves for uncertainty over the next few years? But I also will then touch on some of the positives as well that we must not forget, and that is, there have been good things around our environment, and also, from my personal perspective, I live in the countryside. It's been quite beneficial for me personally. I'm just saying, having this time to recharge, shall we say. So perhaps you could give us a bit of a perspective on both sides of the coin, because I think we also should try to embrace change and look to a positive future also,
Absolutely. Yeah, I really see COVID has been quite a powerful catalyst for transformation. And I've observed, I would say 4 different main categories of coping strategies. Some have the tendency of more outward expression, either positive or negative. If they have the negative tendencies, they might have a tendency of watching a lot of negative news, sharing conspiracy theories, maybe not following the protective measures like they should, or eating a lot of junk food, watching a lot of TV, like exposing themselves to digital screens and so on. So this is like the negative expression. And then you have more like the proactive expressions where you reach out to people and try to support people. People engage in new hobbies. They do a lot of creative work. I've seen a lot of patients engage with the art, for example, as one powerful coping mechanism. People spending more time outdoors and really forcing themselves to be more creative in the way that they engage with other people. So, and also they find more meaning in being helpful, to find ways to provide help for others. And then you have the inward expressions, which can be both proactive and more destructive as well. If you have the destructive tendency, you might go into a lot of anxiety, depression, you might isolate yourself, or you might worry a lot and stay in your head. So that is not very, you hold yourself or isolate yourself. And then you have the inward proactive tendency where you might meditate, you go into more self-reflection, self-contemplation, you have new insights, you see your life maybe in a new perspective. I see people changing career paths, for example. They have time to reflect on what is not really working in their own life and how they might change that. So you have these different tendencies, and many people have like a mix or like, you might have one or two dominant tendencies, and then you have a mix of these different strategies. And I've seen these in both the general public and among my patients. I think that many of my patients, they have also, of course, have increased symptoms, mostly of worry and anxiety. Some are worried, of course, about getting sick or their close ones getting sick. Others are more worried about losing their jobs or just the state of the world. Where's the future? How are we going to deal with this in the future? So a lot of hopelessness also. But then again, some people get some contrast to their own issues. They see.
Okay, I think we've just briefly lost Lena. This might give us an opportunity to go to Chris. Chris, hopefully you can hear us and the signal's working. Could you please do us a short introduction, Chris? But also I'd love to get an insight from your perspective, because I believe the arts will be the creative side that can actually bring us out of this and can help a lot of people.
Well, that's literally music to my ears. Thanks a lot, Gareth. And my apologies. This is my third device that I've tried to get into this broadcast, but the third one seems to be the charm. And in a sense, perhaps that's a good intro, actually, because part of the coping strategy in these unusual times is to have a plan B, a plan C, not to stress out when things don't work out perfectly, to keep your focus, think what you can do, and also not to overly stress for things that are outside of your control. So I took that advice, and here I am. I'm in your show. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Bailey. I am the Arts and Health Lead at the World Health Organization. And yes, that you might think that's a rather unusual thing, and it is. WHO is a public health organization. We deal with emergency response. We deal with non-communicable diseases and communicable diseases. Arts are not the first thing that one might think that WHO would look into, and it is a relatively new program. But just as a brief introduction to the first question most people have, why arts? It's really quite simple. If our goal is to not only provide the best possible evidence-based health information to improve the health and well-being of humans all over the planet, regardless of where they are. We also have to be concerned with how to engage them so that behaviors that have been destructive can change positively. And one of the things that we found is that, yes, it's true, data, evidence, and information are indeed essential for establishing scientific truth, objective reality, problem solving, saving lives. But we also know from the evidence that data, evidence, and information by themselves are not always effective in getting people to change their behavior or deep set opinion. To do that, we need empathy, often in the form of a narrative. And what we found in exploring this world is that engagement on an empathic level has a quote unquote healing ability. And by healing ability, I'm talking about the potential of art to comfort, to contextualize, to confront issues, to build community. Because at WHO, back in our 1947 Constitution, we defined health as not merely the absence of disease, but the attainment of the highest level of physical, mental, and social well-being. And certainly the arts are a whole range of methodologies that our species has evolved to do exactly that. Perhaps that was too long an introduction. My apologies.
That was absolutely perfect, Chris, because I was actually going to, specify the fact that that is the definition of health, that that the WHO embrace, and it's something that we focus on, particularly around our work. It's prevention, supporting the health services, looking at these ways and means to effectively support the existing health service, because we all know the pressure they're under, the lack of staff, the huge staffing problems that we face. By 2030, 18 million people shortfall is the expectation. And so now we have an opportunity to anticipate the future, invest in prevention at scale, use these platforms that we have, work with the WHO, also work with the faith groups in this area to develop new ways of working, but also to create new and meaningful jobs. On that point, I'd like to just ask Miriam, maybe just give us some of your insight, because you're working in sound medicine as well, and maybe some of the coping strategies that you can share, and maybe just a little bit of a touch on some of the work that we're about to engage with around the concerts for the poor, working with Pope Francis at the Vatican as well. And that will be exciting. Music to your ears, Christopher, shall I say, because when you see some of our plans that we have in the future around how we're supporting poverty, SDG 1 through SDG 3 and the arts, that will be an interesting topic.
Lovely. Can't wait to hear.
Certainly. Thank you, Garrett. Yes, I've been immersing myself in sound healing step by step throughout the last years. After I grew up as a musician, learning intensively violin and classical music, and then went into medicine. And to start from there, during my studies, I already learned how I experienced myself, how music can balance you and get you more into a self-care, in a centering mode, when you're challenged from the outside and when you have to deal with radical changes around you. And I went into sound healing through an own, because of a breakthrough experience I had during a phase where I was suffering from pain syndrome. And it was just thinking about that, I just feel again how immensely impactful that was. And I learned, I got trained in gong sound therapy, which is working with very low frequencies, or a very broad frequency range in general, but a lot with very low frequencies where you can, so to say, take the elevator into a theta state or into brainwave states where you can relax on a very profound level. And this takes you into a completely new dimension of consciousness where you are not cognitively involved into thinking patterns or into your daily rituals or daily stress, so to say. It gives you a break, such a radical break, that you for half an hour or an hour, or even just 15 minutes of a gong session, that you come back into your daily life and you feel refreshed, you feel reborn, you can look at things and at challenges from different perspectives. It might sound a bit like a wondrous thing when I explain like that, and I don't have all the explanations for that. I think we're still at a very early stage to be able to explain these phenomena. But there's also at the same time a lot of research going on, and as Christopher Bailey said, there's a lot of evidence in music therapy and sound therapy in general. So taking the bow from gong sound therapy back to music therapy and the evidence, I guess for many people, the arts and music are still something quite exotic within the health sector. I know that it's been around for a long time, also in the clinical setting, as a complementary measure and supporting psychological development, psychological treatment, psychiatric diseases, and I really believe that the arts and music, or let's say generally the arts, are vital for healthcare, and that they can probably impact us in our preventative way to deal with our health and prevent illness and diseases in a broader way than we already know by now. So you also sorry, let me take a sip of water before I get too excited about the next project.
Yeah, you're making a good point, though. You're making a very good point, because in the health system as present, what you tend to happen, I'm sure Christopher has a lot of experience, Lena, everyone around, and Neela, with the arts projects that we have within the system at present, they tend to be just pilot projects, and they never get more than a year under their belt before they're shelved. And that means you can't evidence-base them per se. And this is a real fundamental problem, because everyone around the table will know that it works. But what will happen when it goes to the senior decision making, it'll say, well, where is the evidence? And it hasn't been given the chance to gather that evidence, so that's part of our problem that we face. Sorry, Miriam, please continue.
Thank you, Garrett. Well, let me see. I think there's something else that I want to mention about the arts that I find very fascinating, and I got to rediscover this for myself as well while I was traveling during the last years before the Corona times now, which is when you immerse yourself in nature, you're experiencing something that you experience energy. There's something that energizes you, that gives you this sort of recreation that you cannot experience when you are inside four walls, or when you're sticking to a separated way of living. And I found very exciting to stumble over some scientific evidence from as early as the 80s, where, for example, universities like Princeton and Yale have been looking into mathematics of the beating heart, and how the structure of the beating heart and the rhythm of the heart goes back into fractal science. And when you think about nature and you see the patterns that reoccur in nature everywhere and all the time, and you just have to open your eyes, it is just, we don't know much about that yet, but it's just amazing how you can see the analogies in nature. And it comes back to art and the arts in general as well, where we find this digestion, this reproduction of natural patterns, and being observed by artists who want to express certain organic or connected feelings and let's say some intuitive kind of an intuitive approach to understanding our world through their lens. And maybe it's difficult to explain, or maybe it's difficult to understand how I explain it at the moment. But there's something about the arts and about nature that that they have in common. And what I also find is that when you look at paintings or when you look at arts from a visual perspective, you deal with colors and you deal with shapes. And I believe that these aspects of the arts have an impact for us, because in the end, colors are nothing else than frequencies, and also shapes. They are the consequence of, in a more abstract way, frequencies coming together. And also music and sounds are nothing else than frequencies. And if you want to be radical, you could hypothesize about how we could reduce or how we could boil down everything to energy and frequencies, being just being a bit provocative here now. And I wanted to mention this because it's been fascinating me for a while now. But let's come back to the idea of the SDGs and music therapy and the arts in general. We have, as you mentioned, we have pilot projects going on, but they often stop after initial founding, or they don't sustain for a longer while. So we can actually have long-term insights into what's happening when we get exposed to certain art projects or influences also on a greater scale. We have a lot of different scientific evidence on single punctual projects, and they range from a clinical setting to preventative settings to lifestyle settings. There has been 1 or 2 years ago, there has been a big study coming out from Geneva, from Professor Huppy, who did a longitudinal, long-term observation of premature born infants and how they react to music. And what she did was she used headphones on these premature babies and accompanied them with a specific music. And what resulted from that was that these babies developed a better brain structure. So the brain very obviously benefited from certain sounds, certain music structures, rhythms, or let's say spherical music, pads, clouds. And what's interesting about that, and that spans again the bow to culture and the arts embedded into culture, that the music she used, or the team used, was coming mainly from an Indian background. It was Indian flute music or harp music, and we know from, for example, from the Vedic traditions that sounds have been used for a long time to rebalance the psyche, the mind, the soul. If you go into Ayurvedic traditions, you also will find statements like that the beginning of the universe was actually sound, as Om or Aum. And you have to tell me if I have to stop, because I can go on about this forever. Coming back from this excursion again, we are now looking at SDG related projects and ideas how we can use sound and music to support the implementation of the SDGs on a global scale. And from my personal opinion is that we can use music and sound on every level of society. It's easily accessible. It's usually not expensive. Most of us have an iPhone or a phone already and have access to streaming platforms like YouTube or Spotify or I'm sure there's going to be in the future, there's going to be a lot of other streaming platforms coming up that offer also different alternatives, or let's say more anthroposophic alternatives to the current ones. We should use that. And we can reach many, many people worldwide with that. I mean, we can reach the poorest communities in Africa, in Asia, in the US, in Europe, wherever you want to go. And we have evidence. It's coming from the WHO, in fact. The WHO has published a huge report on the relevance of the arts for health last November, and led by two fantastic researchers, among them Daisy Fancourt. And you know, it's in front of us. We just have to tap into it.
Embrace it, absolutely. And I think one of the points I'll make with some of the work we're doing at the moment, that Miriam's been supporting myself and the Vatican, is the Concerts for the Poor, which Pope Francis initiated last year, and which we held at the Vatican and in Lodz and in Mendoza. And this year we're looking to host the concerts across our cities. So that we've been working on that paper. Lena, if I come to you, just what Miriam was saying about the influence of sound, and if we look at COVID now and coping strategies, perhaps there's something that could be looked into in more depth. It would be very interesting, Miriam, to see eventually those children who had the sound, the earphones, how are they coping during COVID now? Have they been able to manage, shall we say, better than others? And that would be something to look at. But Lena, your perspective of sound and music and arts, and an opportunity there perhaps for people to cope better?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something I highly encourage also. And I see it in a lot of clients that they take their own initiative in engaging in more arts, writing. We also use writing, for example, as a way of processing different symptoms. So I really think that the art can help facilitate the therapeutic process. We use animation videos within our e-health program, where you can follow different characters telling a story that they can actually relate to and feel like they can connect to, and not feel alone about their issues. So I think it has a very powerful both psychoeducative opportunity for bringing a message clearer across, that the arts have a really strong potential in creating movement or inner resonance. I think this is a really important mechanism that the arts works through. You have in all kinds of intervention, you need to be open for the change. That's the most important thing. You have to be open and allow it. You have to be motivated to change. And I really see that the arts can trigger this or facilitate this openness and romance, and like Dr. said, make people feel both empathy for others and self-compassion through expressing themselves through the art. So that's highly something that I highly encourage. And I also think it's the aspect of mindfulness that it's something that helps us really stay in the present moment. And it's the same with nature. So that's the common link, I guess, to it's something that opens you up and just allows you to be really present instead of going into your head or going into worry or rumination and so on. So I think it's a really powerful agent of change, and it should be integrated into healthcare.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's and also, how do you embrace it into your lifestyle? You know, I just speak from my experience. I recall I used to listen to music at night, and it made me feel really great. Like, so I felt quite well. And then I was just reading a piece about, well, why don't you listen to the music in the morning when you wake up? And just a very simple change like that helps you then set up for the rest of the day. Like you feel good in the morning when you listen to the music. Christopher, I don't know if the signal hasn't been great. Can you hear us now? I was just going to ask from what you've heard around from different colleagues here. Oh, we've lost them. I'll go to Neela. Neela, you've a lot of experience in the health sector. You've been around, you've been in commissioning, you've worked internationally all over the world. Do you feel that there's an opportunity with COVID-19 to actually make a change now, a positive change? Because for many years before COVID-19 came in, the health system has been under immense strain for so long, and really has been needing a catalyst towards a positive change, particularly with staff. We are losing a lot of staff because of stress and burnout. The system is really, it can't cope with demand. We've rising NCDs. Is this kind of a tipping point? And I'll ask Chris the same question. Is this a tipping point, an opportunity for the health service to finally embrace a preventative approach? I think people should understand that health is wealth. I mean, when we look at the economy and we look at economics, and if you look at why are they plowing so much money into test and trace it? Well, it's simple economics. You have to keep the economy going. So, but it's beneficial for everyone if we keep people healthy. Health is wealth. So is this the chance? Is this the opportunity from your perspective? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead, Neela.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think we've been running ill health service for a long time, with all its problems of underfunding and problems with recruitment and all the everything else. We concentrated on the people who are ill, but we haven't really looked at how to be well and how to prevent ill health. There are certain conditions, are linked clearly with lifestyle, and there is a lot we can do to prevent, becoming ill. So I do think it's a tipping point, and I hope that preventative aspect of health, and I stress on well-being, because I think something that everybody has to take responsibility for, how to keep well. But we need support and support of the governments who make policies about how certain things could be prevented, so that the individuals don't fall prey to advertising and poor policies that kind of lead to eventually ill health. And we know that poverty, we sit around the table here and we are quite fortunate because we can actually do all those things that we've been talking about. But there are people who are stuck on the 10th floor in a small flat with 5 children. How about their well-being and their coping strategy? It is very different. So going back to, I think we do want to see the society which is equal. And I do strongly believe that I can be well if you are well. So it's not good enough that I'm okay. It doesn't matter whether you're okay or not. At the end of the day, we are all connected. We are connected. We are part of nature. So we do have to look after each other. And I think COVID-19 has brought the best out of human nature, but at the same time, worst out of human nature as well. And I think because of the inequalities, and that needs to be addressed if we want a society that's going to kind of feel good about themselves, but also about others. And I do feel strongly I cannot be safe unless you are safe. So for that, I have to do everything right. I have to take responsibility for, how to keep away from this COVID-19 and do everything that is necessary. And if everybody thought in the same way, I think we are likely to kind of keep this virus, at bay and move forward. So going back to, I just want to mention a couple more points, if I may. I think, connecting with nature is absolutely key because we are part of nature. And what Miriam was saying about being energy, being part of, the bigger picture, I completely agree with that. And I think when you connect with the nature, you really lose yourself. And when you lose yourself, your ego is pushed back, and you find that joy and bliss and whatever else that goes on, it takes you to a different place. And that itself is a big kind of support for you to cope with the challenges. Life is that, we are going to get, it's not going to be smooth all the time. And life experience and our own individual life experiences tell us that there will be ups and downs. But what we do with that is going to be key, how we keep well. So my routine, Gary, just very quickly, 1 hour walk every morning with my best friend. And when I said this to somebody, are you walking? Are you breaking rules? I said, no, she is in Birmingham. I'm here. We just walk and talk, But that's gone on for the last 6 months, apart from 50 days, And then music, I completely agree with music, because music is like meditation, So 1 hour of music, you lose yourself. Then you also kind of look after your nutrition, What you eat is extremely important to keep well, So I've been cooking a lot more for myself and the family, and that gives me tremendous joy and, purpose, that I'm doing something really good. And then I think keeping, I mentioned about yoga, meditation, and looking after your, just not physical well-being, but also your mental, and I would add, that's not been mentioned, spiritual well-being. I think Royal College of Psychiatrists, and full marks to them, since 1990, they have created a subgroup of looking at the spiritual well-being of their patients. And that is amazing, and it's now 11 years since they had that. And because mental health, I think patients do feel that, their spiritual side or their practices are not always taken on board by health service. As a result, they feel disconnected. Their disease is treated, but not the whole being. And how can you heal a person unless you are whole? You look at the person as a whole. So I think that is really quite important. I do think very strongly about it, that we can look after ourselves, but in a way it is like a privilege, and we need to make sure that the underprivileged people of our society are also cared for, and they have the same opportunity. And I think Viz can do that. I think through the digital platforms, how we take that forward, I would be very interested in kind of discussing this further, really.
I agree. I think the spiritual point is very relevant. And I think, Manuela, I'm going to ask, you took part last week in our SDG Champions event. It gave a fascinating insight into the financing side as well. And also, there's just been a recent report from Oxfam published around, the top 32 companies in the world have gained nearly £100 billion over the last couple of months. Why, on the other hand, we 400 million redundancies worldwide. And really what we need to have is this conversation in the wider spectrum of the public around the companies that we want to support for the future. And really those companies should be social enterprises, or the WISP platform, which we've set up as a social enterprise, World Health Organization. And companies that are ethically sound, that do right, generate value and share that value. So you generate a profit, whatever it may be, but you reinvest that back into creating new and meaningful jobs. That's very much aligned with the strategy that we have in place with UNGSII Foundation, is mentoring these companies and investing in the cities for the future. Manuela, would you just give us a little bit of a summary what you think the opportunities are in the next, I know we're talking about coping strategies, but to give people hope and an insight into what we have in the pipeline around some of the projects that we're engaged in and what we want to do within the cities.
Right. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's been very interesting listening to my co-speakers here tonight. I think, fundamentally, there is a shift. A coronavirus, the pandemic, and maybe potentially an upcoming second lockdown in Europe is certainly creating a whole lot of issues from a personal viewpoint and from the societal viewpoint. Some would need to understand this is a marathon, and having resilience through a marathon, it's a big asking for a lot of people, significantly. So what to do, really? Great to go out for an hour, or great to listen to music and have good nutrition. Let's not forget that not that's maybe a luxury that may not be available to many. Additionally, there is this sort of shift from adhering to public health measures to those who are kind of jumping ship and thinking, look, we just want to get over with this. We want to go ahead. We want to go back to our normal. However, what if we looked in a different way? What if we looked at coronavirus as, in fact, a tremendous opportunity for a change that looks at healthcare in a holistic way, that looks at a person as a sum of different parts from the energetic viewpoint? I know that perhaps there's a lot of research or evidence-based research in energy medicine, but it is certainly coming in that surely may not fit into a randomized controlled trial type of design, but it certainly fits into a different type of design that looks at, like I said, in a systemic way about what a person is, about what a person needs. So when we look at music as a real thing, well, of course, energy is a real thing. Mental health is a real thing. It may not be showing on a blood test, but really it is real, and you are really going through that, and you feel better. So what can we do? First of all, in a societal context, we need to understand this is a traumatic experience. Coronavirus is a trauma, well and truly, for a whole lot of people. Because trauma is when there is this difficulty in adjusting or changing, because the world is changing. Not many people are so. It's so easy for them to jump from one reality to another. So we have to go a little deeper. So we have to think about that really changing a person's reality, having a new reality is actually a great opportunity to really ask ourselves, what do we want? What can we learn? How can we grow from here? And what is our hope of a new future, because we're all collaborating really in creating this future. So from a healthcare viewpoint, I can see that certainly Australia, United States, Canada, and a few other countries, I'll say this part of the world somewhat, are really, for example, moving from quick, if you like, system of healthcare to a more comprehensive type of healthcare, which is comprehensive of preventive medicine, for environmental medicine, for functional medicine, for integrative medicine, integrating of arts, of music, of nutrition, of well-being, of keeping the patient as a center in this recovery, if you like. Look, at the end, it comes down to changes the contest, really, but bringing in optimism and hope. I see cancer patients all day long, every day, and it's not easy. It's not easy for them, but we give 6 strategies. 6 strategies have been identified to facilitate hope during this time, and I think can extrapolate from cancer patients to everyone, really. So building and sustaining meaningful relationships, absolutely essential, whether they can be within the household, whether it can be with a neighbor, whether it can be with somebody you never met before, but you meet, or you can connect on FaceTime, or whatever that is. That will be meaningful, creating meaningful relationship. Staying positive. Living in the present moment. Okay, that's where we are. We're in together. Yes, we're going to get through this. Absolutely. And then God knows what the rest, what's ahead. But promoting accomplishments every day. I've gone through another day, and this day has been good for me, and it's been good for the people around me. Feeling a spiritual connection. People find a lot of healing through music, through praying, through churches, through belief system, and most of all, anticipating that it's going to be a better future. Anticipate not just survival, but anticipating that everyone, each and every one of us, is able to thrive. So that's what I hope the future is about. This is what we give to our
That's fantastic. Anticipating, Chris, this is such an opportunity from the WHO's perspective, WHO. We have buckets full of data, okay? All the statistics that you need. And if you look even from the WHO's perspective, they've done a fantastic job in terms of, put people on alert. We knew back in January, in February, March, they got the message out there. As far as I can see, the onus is on countries to take responsibility for the lack of action. And that's responsibility. We have to bear the brunt of that, each and every one of us. And we have to say, what are the lessons? And the WHO, they raised alarm bells. But learning and hope and anticipation of the future, we have a lot of wisdom, particularly even if you look in this group, but out there in society. And we know how to handle these situations because we've been through this before. And so we should be able to articulate that in our messaging. Perhaps can we just say, from your perspective, from WHO, is this now a point where we can leverage this anticipation, shall we say, and this hope towards a future that is post-COVID, but how we manage COVID, but also then NCDs, because you'll know yourself the huge burden on the health system with surgery, for example, 28 million delayed surgeries over the last 6 months. And this is going to cause huge problems, cancer services delayed. Is it now time to say to governments, let's start investing in prevention at scale so that we have long-term benefits? And that includes programs around the arts.
Well, yes to everything. In fact, that list you just mentioned could go on. The interruption of childhood vaccination is another crucial area that has been a side effect of this pandemic. And then, of course, the mental health side effect as well, which is only going to exacerbate quietly and slowly over time as this process lengthens, and a short-term solution seems less and less likely. But I think there are a couple of things. One is, you were talking earlier about the evidence, and I would like to point everyone to the WHO report that came out last November on the evidence base for the health benefits of the arts that came out of our Copenhagen office. It was the first of its kind at WHO, and not only does it establish, for the first time from WHO's perspective, quantifying a basic evidence base for the health benefits of the arts, but it actually gives policy recommendations. And I think it's game-changing, because for the first time, WHO is telling member states that the arts are not a nice-to-have, they're a must-have if we would like to have a healthy society, and health being defined, as we did earlier, of also a state of societal well-being. And I agree with my fellow panelists that's made the link of this COVID moment to trauma. Our society is facing a trauma that we face maybe once every century or so, and our memories are short, we forget. And it is extremely difficult, just as it is difficult for an individual to respond to a traumatic event and bounce back in a healthy or transformed way. It's just as difficult for a society. And I think that's where the special power of the arts comes into play. And if I could take maybe 3 minutes and illustrate that, perhaps it would be better than just explaining it. I myself suffer from terminal glaucoma, and I have lost most of my vision, which of course makes technical difficulties with a computer all the more difficult, because I can't really see screens. And when I found out that I was losing my vision, it was like a death to me. 80% of the way in our modern society we experience the world is visual. And when that slipped out of my grasp, I felt that the world was no longer beautiful. I felt isolated from it. It was a deep loneliness. And in fact, I started going through the phases of of mourning. On certain days, I would feel intense grief. On other days, I would feel rage. On other days, I would go into denial. I even went through a bargaining phase of, if I do this exercise or that breathing or this eating, maybe my optic nerve will regenerate. And like in a mourning, I eventually got to an acceptance. And here's where I think the opportunity for the arts comes in, because it's more than just accepting a misfortune. It's having it redefine you and transfigure you. So now, after getting the assistive technology, after learning how to echolocate, how to adapt to my environment, it's more than just acceptance and management. It's transforming. Where now I'm not ashamed of being blind. It is a part of my identity. And the world around me is a soundscape and something in some ways more present and more palpable than the visual world that I've left behind. Not better, but has its own strange beauty. Just as you might close your eyes to better savor a glass of red wine, just as you might close your eyes to better embody a beautiful piece of music, just as you might willingly close your eyes to trace the gentle slope of a lover's forearm, so too do I close my eyes to better share this moment with you. And that's the healing power of art, that presence that my colleague spoke of earlier, and living in that moment fully and completely.
I think that's the right note to finish our discussion, Chris, and I really appreciate you sharing the story as well. And I just want to thank everyone for their time this morning. This, of course, is recorded and will be shared. We'll also publish it on our podcast as well across various Spotify and other channels. Thanks, Miriam. Thanks, Manuela, Lena, Neela, and Christopher for joining us this morning. We'll close the session, and I look forward to welcoming you again onto the studio. We'll discuss this in more detail as we go along the line. But from everyone here, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.